It ain't like it used to be. Alright, how has the storage auction business changed over the last few years since it went from a business that was primarily done in person with live auctions to a business now that's primarily done online with the auctions being held online? It's changed a lot. You know, a lot of the old timers that were used to it all being live, a lot of them have gone away. A lot of them quit, a lot of them retired, a lot of them just quit doing it because it was a major change and they just couldn't adjust. Or some of them were just getting older anyways, you know, ready to retire, and this was just kind of the thing that just kind of pushed them, you know, over the top, you know, motivated them to retire. But when I first started buying units, you know, there wasn't any online units at all, any online auctions at all. It was all live. Every single one, period, there wasn't even a thought of there being an online auction. Everything was live, so you had to actually, you know, kind of do your research and find out where all the auctions were going to be. You had to kind of map it out. A lot of times you had to call up facilities, you had to look in the papers, and you had to figure out where all these auctions were going to be. And, you know, and what you would do is you would kind of say, oh, over here in this city there's 5 different places with auctions, but they only have 1 each. Over here in this city in the opposite direction, there's only 1 facility, but they have 15 units. But the thing with that was what was advertised. So you really never knew how many units there were going to be when you got there. And sometimes you would drive all the way there and everything would get paid up before the auction would actually happen. Sometimes, literally, at the last, down to the last minute, the units would get paid up. So you'd be sitting there waiting, and just a couple minutes ago, you'd see somebody come flying in, and you just kind of had that feeling, and you knew that they were there to pay for their unit. And they'd pay it up, and it'd be canceled, and you'd have to go home. And so that was kind of the deal when it was live. It was a lot of driving around, a lot of gas wasted. I mean, there were some days you would drive all over it. Like, I was buying them all over Atlanta. I would drive all over Atlanta, go through traffic and everything, and some days, whole entire day out there, and wouldn't end up getting anything. That's just how it was sometimes. You would just waste your time, because sometimes all you would see was garbage. Literally nothing even worth bidding on, or you'd show up and the few units they did have would just go through the roof expensive. It was just very unpredictable. It's a very unpredictable business. Now it's a little more, with it being online, you don't have to waste your time driving around. You don't have to drive all the way, you know, 30 minutes away, an hour away or more to end up, they open up 1 unit and it's just a dirty mattress in there. Or sometimes they would actually cut the lock off right there and open the unit, and they would be completely empty. Literally nothing in there. The people had moved out, and they just never told them, and they never contacted them, so they went all the way through the auction process, and it was empty. Because some facilities would cut the lock beforehand, some of them would cut it right off, you know, right there at the auction. So that could happen, you know, you drive an hour, and then it's just an empty unit. There were people, a lot of times, they would drive from other states. I don't know how far they were driving, but people from here in Georgia, Tennessee and Alabama was not common for people to come from both of those states. But now you can see online, you can view stuff, you know, that's far away, you can view stuff that's close, you don't have to drive around and waste your time and energy. But now what you do have online is a lot of the units that get posted on there don't actually make it to the auction. So they're posted, and then, you know, when it gets a few days before they cancel, the day of they cancel, an hour before it cancels. So you do all this bidding and looking, and then the unit was never going to come up for auction because the tenant was just, you know, procrastinating. And that unit at a live auction, you would have never even have seen the unit, never even have known it existed. But with it being online, you see some really killer units, some good units sometimes that never make it to actually being auctioned off. And then sometimes you'll see them several times in a row, because that's what people do. They get late over and over and over again. They just wait to the last minute and pay up, the last minute and pay up. People do that with a lot of their bills, and the storage unit bill is no exception. So there's less wasted time physically driving around, but there is wasted time mentally and, you know, bidding on stuff that isn't ever actually going to be auctioned off. It's a little bit frustrating sometimes. You think you have a good unit 1 and it's getting close, and then it cancels. And then a lot of times after, the other thing with online, even after you win the unit, until you show up and pay, the tenant can cure the delinquency. So if you win the auction and it's an hour away, even if you drove right then to get it, they still might, you know, get there before you do. But a lot of times you're going to win the unit and you're not going to be able to go till the next day, so there's a good chance. It happens to me all the time. Actually, this week that just passed, it happened to me several times. I was actually out in the middle of loading other units, about to head to go get one, and it canceled. I had to get on my phone and start bidding to win some other units just so I would be able to fill my truck out a little bit better. Another aspect of the live auctions that's gone, kind of a fun part, kind of a sad part that it's gone, but it was really, for people that were really in the business trying to make a living, it was something that kind of sucked a lot of your time, was just the kind of goofing off out of the auctions. A lot of people would just go to auctions just to hang out because they became friends with people and buddies with people, and people would play cards. Literally, we'd have full-on poker games. I never really played, I don't play poker, but they'd be full-on poker games, gambling money, you know, out there. And there were several times, I remember, there were poker games going and waiting on the auction. The auctioneer would show up to have the auction, and sometimes, I guess it was a really good game, these people wouldn't even show up to the auction. They would just, you'd look over and they'd be, you'd walk to the unit and you'd be like, where'd all this be? They're still playing poker. But, you know, oh well, let's, you know, come on, let's open this unit and bid on it before they come. But there was just, you know, a lot of hanging out. A lot of people became really good friends. There were a lot of people that were like really old friends. Some of the old timers had, you know, known each other for years, and it was kind of cool. I got to know a lot of people. And the one, you know, business-wise, it wasn't, because you were just kind of wasting your time a lot of times doing all that stuff. But one thing that you are missing is you would gain a lot of connections, ways to sell stuff. Because some people, you'd start talking to people, and they would know ways to sell stuff, or places to sell stuff that you didn't know about. Or they would be interested in a certain category of items that you didn't want to deal with. And they'd be like, hey, do you have any of these? If you ever get any of these, let me know. And, you know, you'd have an outlet for that. So there was a lot of connections that you could make, good business connections, that you can't get now, you know, anywhere near the extent, because you're not out there mingling, you know, and meeting new people. That was the thing. When it was a live auction, you were meeting new people all the time, all different people, all different cultures and races. I mean, here in Atlanta, I mean, you know, it was anybody and everybody. And literally, I've seen famous people out of these auctions, people from other states. Then there's a lot of drama, too. A lot of people that just hate each other. And people were just running up units just because, you know, they hated that person. And conniving, different things, and backstabbing that went on. And I think a lot of that's gone. It's more... Now it's more just straight up business, because you're doing it, you're bidding on it by yourself. You might run into somebody out there every now and then when you're cleaning your units, but it's more like you're bidding on these things, you know, in private. You're going in to pick them up, nobody's there, and all that stuff, you know, for the most part is gone. As far as all of the stuff like you see in Storage Wars, a lot of that kind of stuff was real. A lot of the rivalries and all that, and people not liking each other, a lot of that stuff is pretty real. But for the most part, that kind of aspect of the business is pretty much done. I mean, there's a few live auctions out there still that you go to and you can kind of still, but it's not the same, because before you were seeing the same, it was all like you worked together, because you would see the same people every day. I mean, you know, because a lot of us would run the same routes, the same areas of town, so you kind of start seeing the same people. And the other thing was that you would kind of work together. So say if you showed up and it was just like 3 or 4 regular people, you know, and they had 15 units, and there was 3 or 4 of you, and then throw in one new person you didn't know. New person, you weren't going to let them get anything, and the other 3 or 4 of you were going to almost kind of take turns for the most part. You know, unit opens up, kind of lay off them, let them get one. Next one, let them get one, and so on. And a lot of times you'd work together and, you know, get stuff very, very cheap. And that's not going to happen now online, because you don't even know who's bidding against you. You have to know. It could be, you know, I've actually had a few times, you know, friends of mine that I found out later on, we were bidding against each other and ran the thing through the roof, and we could have just stopped a long time ago and we could have just split it. But I didn't know it was them, because some of the sites do let you know they have a username. Some of the sites don't have a username, so you really have no clue who is, you know, who's bidding against you. And okay, another big thing that affects bidding is when you could go in person, you could see way more detail of what you were bidding on. And obviously, you could smell it. You could see if a unit, because sometimes it's like, oh, this person has really nice stuff. They have expensive stuff, fancy stuff. But when you start looking close, they didn't take care of it. you can just see stains on everything. You can see a lot of wear all around the edges. You can see stuff in the back, and you can make out broken pieces. And because you can see it with your own eyes, and you can look from every angle, and sometimes you could find stuff like, you'd be like, where's the piece, you know, like a bed? Are the rails in here for this bed? And you could stand over on your tippy toes all in the corner, you look back, and you would see the rails sticking up way back in their corner, because you could find every angle. Sometimes I'd get down on my hands and knees and look up underneath stuff, and you'd see stuff back there. You get down on there and you look back there and you see like the tire of a motorcycle, or you know, you see the a washer and dryer that's hidden that you can't see. But if you look up underneath all those chairs, you can see the bottom of it. And online, you can't do that. You can't smell it. You can't see all of the wear and tear that's on some of these. You can't see it when they're just dirty and kind of dingy, or when it has that animal hair on it. You can't really see that because some of them have that animal hair all over it. And then when you have that nasty rat pee smell or cat pee smell, or you know, that you can't see. And then the rat droppings, when you see the little rat droppings, every now and then, and online the picture's good enough to make some of this stuff out, but most of the time you can't really see that stuff. And you can't see the roaches scatter. When the door opens and you see roaches scattering around, you know that this thing's infested, because you see those little bitty roaches and they're going everywhere. And live, you can see that kind of stuff. Online, that's always the risk that you're going to run into stuff like that, that if you would have just been able to see it with your own naked eye, you would have been able to see that. But you're looking through the camera lens and only whatever pictures, you know, that they took. Sometimes it's only a couple. And then whatever the lighting was at the moment. On those outside units, or you know, the shadows across the unit, or the sun shining in there, bleaching everything out, it's just very hard to see. So you gotta be a little bit more careful. Try to do a little bit more detective work when you're looking at these units, you know, and what you're looking at. My method is I always try to bid on big, full units, so there's less room for me to lose. If it ends up being, you know, dirty or bad, you know, if I bid on a full unit packed to the ceiling, wall to wall, floor to ceiling, there's usually so much volume that it's hard to lose. And if it turns out good and you have a lot of volume, then it goes really good, because you have a lot of stuff and you're finding good stuff. So, you know, volume is the way to go if you can handle it. That's what, if you're going to do this for a living, you need to build up to the point where you can buy volume instead of just trying to nitpick. If you're going to pick, go to yard sales, estate sales, but this isn't really a picking business. This is a volume business. And online, it needs to be a volume business for the most part, because that's the only way you're going to really be safe and consistently do good on these units. Alright, the other thing is, a lot of times you would be out there at a live auction and you could just, you know, driving around the truck, you'd buy a unit and you could pick it up, especially a small unit. You know, if you were out there and there was a little unit and nobody was really interested, but you saw a couple of things that were either interesting or you knew you could sell, a lot of times you could buy it and you could load it right then before the next auction, and it really wouldn't cost you anything extra gas. Now, with it being online, I mean, if you start bidding on one little small one, even if it's just 20 minutes away, I mean, it's 20 minutes to drive one way just to get, you know, a couple boxes in the floor or something. So, you know, the kind of load and go, you know, made it easy. Sometimes doing a live, you can't really do that online anymore, the load and go. You've got to really be more particular and plan your route out and everything like that. Other thing is, there was always that, when you showed up live, you never knew how many people were going to be there. Sometimes you would show up and there would just be a couple of you. And there was always that chance, that feeling that you never knew what they were going to open up and was going to be behind the doors. They could just open up, there's only a couple of you, and they could open up a killer one, a beautiful one with just, you know, awesome stuff piled up everywhere, and you might get a good deal on it. Especially, I knew when there were certain people there, all they wanted was little small units, because that's all they could handle, because they were just doing it part-time. And it was just me and them, and I'm like, if they open up a big 10 by 30 or something full, you know, whole household and furniture, I'm going to get it cheap, because they just, you know, that's not what they do. They can't handle it. And that happened many times where I got really big full units for, you know, for pennies on the dollar, ridiculously low prices, which would not happen online, because everybody that's a professional, everybody that's full-time, that's doing, you know, that's out there, they can see every unit across the, you know, whole, they can see units in other states, but everybody within a 50-mile radius is going to see, for the most part, every unit that comes up. So, and it, or if there's something really, really good, like a really good item right in the front that's worth a lot of money, and sometimes at the live auction, you knew what it was worth, nobody else did. With it being online, somebody else is going to know. If they don't know, they have time to sit there and look stuff up online. Literally, you can get model numbers off boxes online and sit there and Google it and find the value, or go on eBay And most of the time on the live, you didn't have much time. It was more quick pace. Sometimes you didn't. Sometimes you had no time. Sometimes you had a couple minutes to really quickly look something up, like 1 or 2 items. But now you got all the time in the world with them being online. So it takes away that surprise factor. That, like, boom, you know, this awesome unit just pops up at some weird location, and there's just a few of you there. That was cool. That was fun. That was exciting. It just ain't gonna happen no more. Good thing though with it being online is that you can, when those good, cool units, interesting, intriguing units pop up, even if it's somewhere you normally wouldn't go, you can see it now. You might have to break out your wallet, but at least you have a chance to even, you know, to bid on it now and maybe get it where you wouldn't have before. All right, and that's just some of the differences between how it used to be when it was live and how it is now when it's online. And like I said, it's more of a, you know, you got to be more of a professional now, more of a full-time person to really do well in this, because you got to have a plan for the stuff, because you're not, for the most part, going to get as much stuff as dirt cheap as you used to. You still get it cheap. There's still plenty of deals to be had. You can hit a jackpot on units, because you just, even with online, I mean, you can't see what's in the boxes. So, I mean, there's still plenty of jackpots out there. There's still plenty of money to be made. It's just not as easy as it was, in the sense that you're going to buy it really cheap and no way you can lose money. It's easier because you don't have to do all the driving and all that hassle, but in some aspects it is a little bit more difficult, you know, as far as you're just not going to get it as cheap. But still plenty of money to be made, so if you're thinking about getting into the business, there's so many units out there and they keep building more storage facilities, then, you know, jump on in. There's money to be made. If you're discouraged, you've been in it a long time, and you feel like everything goes too high, there's still money to be made. I mean, you just gotta step up there and buy some of these things. I mean, I buy them all the time online, and there's still plenty of plenty of money to be made out there, plenty of opportunity. So it's changed a lot. Some for the worse, some for the better, but there ain't nothing you can do about it. It ain't gonna go back to the way that it was. There's still a few live, but it's never going to go back where all of these are live. It's just not going to happen. The business has completely changed, you know, I mean, 100%. It's completely changed from what it was just a few years ago, and from what it was 5+ years ago. I mean, it's completely different. Some might think for the good, some might think for the worse. You know, whatever the case is, there's still money to be made if you're in it as a business, and to make money and to make a living. It's still a viable business. Alright, that's it for this video. Hit the like button if you like this video. Leave a comment, ask me a question, hit the subscribe button. We got more videos like this, videos of us going through units, thrifting, all that kind of stuff. Alright, and have a good one.